This past week, I went to one of the greatest chicken distributors in the planet. We know them as Chick-fil-A. And, oh, we got a clap. We got one. That was good. That's right, Cam. Tell them. Clap for Chick-fil-A. Went to Chick-fil-A. We had a soccer game to get to yesterday. My daughter's playing soccer, and so we decided we need some breakfast to make this soccer thing legit, to make this happen, to be able to sit and enjoy the festivities of rec league soccer. Some Chick-fil-A would be required. And so we went past the Chick-fil-A over here on the Poplar Road. I don't know if y'all tried curbside pickup at Poplar Road. It's fantastic. It's so quick. You do it ahead of time. Not that I was doing it while I was driving, but I'm just saying you do it ahead of time. And as you get there, you pull into this special lane and you wait. And then all of a sudden, it's like boom, boom, boom. You tell them you're here as you're pulling into it. Like you have to hit the button safely. You have to hit the button saying you're here at the light. So when the light turns green, you hit it here even though you're not in the parking lot yet. By the time you get in there, it's like, hey, there's a team member is bringing your order to your food. You roll down the window and boom, there it is. Now here's the thing, with Chick-fil-A, I don't have to check my order because it's always right. You go to anywhere else, you get the bag, you have to hold everybody else up. It's like, look, I don't know what these guys are doing. So you're going to check how many fries are in it, how many sandwiches are in it. Are we good to go? Can we go? And I'm like thinking, hey, these people can wait behind me. I got nowhere to be except for getting my food. But at Chick-fil-A, there's no stress. It's always right. They hand you the bag. They know your name because you got the little app thing and it tells them. It's kind of creepy, but it's not. And they know your name like, hey, Clint, have a great day. Now, it just turns out the guy that served my Chick-fil-A yesterday was Lexington. Lexington, you here? Okay, not today? Okay. Oh, no, there he is. There's Lex. Hey, so Lex actually knows me. Like, we go back, you know what I'm saying? We were in a small group together, the whole thing. So Lex gave me my bag, but other times, people that come out there, they don't actually know who I am. But sure enough, it still makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. I get the bag, I'm going, and everything's good, except for yesterday. Dang, I just told everybody Lexington didn't pack the bag, okay? Lexington didn't pack the bag, all right? Yesterday, we get going, and I'm like, hey, son, hand me the biscuit. You know, so he hands me the biscuit. Now, I ordered, I might be strange, I love sausage, egg, and cheese biscuit. Whew, good gracious. Sometimes, though, I'm just not in the mood for the egg from Chick-fil-A. It's not quite, like it's better than most places, but sometimes I can just pass on the egg. So I get a sausage and cheese biscuit. Give me some of that. And so that's what I ordered, and that's what I was pumped about. And so he hands me, no such thing. Right? There's no such thing. It is not my biscuit. You know what I'm saying? It's not what I ordered. How could they do such a thing? Lexington. How could this happen? You know what I'm saying? Keep it simple. I put it specifically in the app. You put it specifically in my bag, just like it says on the app. Life is hard. Life is hard. No, I will be back at Poplar Road Chick-fil-A at least 5 more times this next week just to show my appreciation. They send me free stuff all the time. No, life is hard, and it's not because I didn't get a sausage and cheese biscuit. Life is hard because all of us have this common thing where if I were to ask any of you to put a list together of the things you wish you didn't have to experience in life, or that anyone that you loved or cared about would experience in life, our list would be the same. They would say things like, no more death, no more mourning, no more crying. Let's get rid of pain and suffering. Could we eliminate disappointment? And instead, could we replace it with peace and joy? And that's a common thing that's normalized for all human experience. The truth is, what we've just described is a longing for heaven. It's a longing for the presence of God. Because in his presence, that list does disappear. The presence of Jesus, joy and satisfaction is present. We see this in the writings in the Bible. The author of Ecclesiastes writes in a section of literature called wisdom literature. He says this: he has made everything beautiful in its time, talking about God. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Think about that for a second. He just said, God has set eternity in the hearts of man. So when we think through, man, why do we long for this? Why is it that we're chasing this down? Why is it that we know the difference between this pain and suffering and death and mourning and all of those things? Why do we know that and not want it to be a part of our lives, and we long for peace and joy? It's because God has set eternity in the hearts of man. That as you were created, that's what was birthed into you. That seed was planted into you. Over the last few weeks, we've been talking about mental health and just the struggles that come with it. I've shared some statistics each week, and I just want to make sure we get on the same page with it. The National Institute of Mental Health tells us this in their latest statistics. 40 million adults in the United States experience anxiety disorders each year. 17.3 million adults in the U.S. experience at least one major depressive episode in the past year. That's a big number of the adults in the United States. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, 1 in 6 youth aged 6 to 17 experience a mental health disorder each year. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among individuals aged 10 to 34 in the U.S. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration give us these three statistics. 57% of adults with a mental illness receive no treatment. And nearly 50% of people with a mental health disorder will experience a substance use disorder at some point in their lives. 70% of youth in juvenile justice systems have at least one mental health condition. 67% of them receive no treatment. And we look at those statistics, and they're very sobering. And we started week 1 with this very simple statement. If we're going to talk about mental health as a follower of Jesus, let me begin with this premise. Everything is spiritual. Everything. And to illustrate this, we talked about David and Goliath, which is a story that has become a metaphor that transcends any of the faith world. You'll hear broadcasters on a sportscast talk about this is a big David versus Goliath type matchup. And so it's become this metaphor that just kind of goes anywhere. Everybody knows this is what this David and Goliath thing means. But to summarize the story and kind of how we got to where we were, basically David is a teenage boy, maybe even a little younger than that. He's got 3 older brothers that are fighting in the army of the Israelites, or the people of God. And he's told by his father, go visit your brothers on the front line, take them some food, check in, and bring a report back. While he's there, there's a guy on the other side, the nation they're fighting, the Philistines, this coastal area, region in and around Jerusalem. They're at war with each other, and this guy walks up. His name is Goliath, and he says, hey, just 1v1, you send your best guy against me. Whoever wins takes the whole thing. We don't have to kill everybody. There don't have to be a bunch of bloodshed. Just you and me, whoever you want to send out, we'll fight, and whoever wins takes it all. And so David's listening to this as a little boy, and he's like, why are we letting this guy say this? He's mocking the people of God. He's mocking our God. He's mocking our army. Why are we letting him get away with this? They're like, oh, bro, shut up. Why are you even here? In fact, his brother says, I know you have a conceited heart. The only reason you're here is because you want to watch a battle. So David takes it upon himself. He goes to the king, and he's like, dude, let me go fight this guy. And the king is like, dude, you're just a kid. And this is where David gets. David says, it doesn't matter who you send. You can send me as a teenager. You can send my brothers who are battle age. You can go. Anyone in our army can go. It doesn't matter who you send to fight. And it honestly doesn't matter who we're going to fight. It can be Goliath. It can be the smallest guy over there, the biggest guy. It can be all of the guys over there. It doesn't matter who's going. It doesn't matter who we're going to fight. The only thing that matters is who's doing the sending. If God's doing the sending, doesn't matter who you send, doesn't matter who you send us up against. He's already decided the outcome. So David takes that very spiritual decision that allows that spiritual frame of reference to guide him, and then he goes to the battlefield. Now, this is what David doesn't do. David doesn't walk onto the battlefield with his head bowed and his eyes closed and try to pray away Goliath. In fact, he goes and visits a stream on his way, and he picks up some stones, and he has a sling, and he has a staff, and he goes to war with tools. And those tools are informed by his spiritual decision that God wants me to move in this direction. But he doesn't use prayers and thoughts and positive vibes to get rid of the giant. He uses the tools that he has at his disposal. And so we made the claim, everything is spiritual. However, we cannot get into the chasm, which that's exactly what it is. It's a deep, dark, descending pit that has no end, where we say we can just thoughts and prayers our way through this stuff. That is not the solution. It begins with the spiritual reality. However, it requires very real, tangible tools to do something about the challenges we face in our mental health. Now, I made a promise week 1 that we were going to talk about that spiritual thing just for 1 week, and the 3 weeks following would be very specific tools for us to utilize. Week 2, we talked about the role of therapy and counseling, and we brought organizations that we trust onto campus. They're still here today. They'll be here next week, that we have vetted and we've done work with, that we would recommend to anyone to go and visit, and they're here again today. This week, we're going to talk about a different tool. This tool doesn't cost you money. You don't have to go somewhere to get it. Every single person on the planet has access to it, and that's what we're going to discuss today. Before we get there, though, I want you to take a small self-assessment. To do this, there's going to be some math involved, so you're going to need your phone or a piece of paper or something. So just pull your phone out, and we're going to walk through it. So I'm going to ask you 6 questions. For those of you who are not moving to your phone, I'm serious. You should get your phone out. It's a real thing, so you can keep track, because you're going to have to add them together and then divide by 6. And I know some of you think you're smart, but you haven't done 5th grade math in a long time. So we're going to put the questions on the screen. Each answer has a numeric value, which will also be on the screen. So you're going to keep track of your answer, really the numeric value, and you're going to add up the numeric value for all 6 questions, and then you're going to divide by 6. That's where you're going to be, right? All right, so here we go. Question number 1. I tend to bounce back quickly after hard times. You get 1 point if you strongly disagree. You get 5 if you strongly agree. And of course, there's a 2, 3, 4 in there as well. I tend to bounce back quickly after hard times. 1 if you strongly disagree. 5 if you strongly agree, or somewhere in there. Question 2. I have a hard time making it through stressful events. Now notice, the numbers flip-flop here, so it's not the same thing. If you think you're the top answer, it's not the same rating, so look at the answer. I have a hard time making it through stressful events. If you strongly disagree, it's a 5. If you strongly agree, it's a 1, or something in between. Question number 3. It does not take me long to recover from a stressful event. It's a 1 if you strongly disagree, 5 if you strongly agree with it does not take me long to recover from a stressful event. Question 4. It is hard for me to snap back when something bad happens. It is hard for me to snap back when something bad happens. 5 if you strongly agree, 5 if you strongly disagree, 1 if you strongly agree. Question number 5. I usually come through difficult times with little trouble. I usually come through difficult times with little trouble. A 1 if you strongly disagree. 5 if you strongly agree. Last question. I tend to take a long time to get over setbacks in my life. I tend to take a long time to get over setbacks in my life. 5 if you strongly disagree, 1 if you strongly agree. So now you're going to add those up, and you're going to divide by 6. You add those up and divide by 6, and that is going to give you your score. I'll give you a second to do that math. So what you just took was a really quick resilience self-assessment. Just a brief resilience self-assessment. And you've got a score that sits somewhere between 1 and 5. If your score is between 1 and 2.99, you would fall into the category of having low resilience. If you're between 3 and 4.3, you would be in normal resilience. And anything higher than 4.3 to 5 would say that you have high resilience. So we want to have a conversation about resilience today. But we're going to change it up a bit. And instead of me doing all the talking, I've invited some friends that know a lot more about this than I do. So I'm going to ask if they would join me on the stage as we get some things set up. The first person that I've invited was my college roommate in undergrad. He and I go back nearly 20 years now. And he has made himself an expert in this particular field that we're talking about. He has his own practice called Earned Resilience. He's also a part of a mental health consulting group called Cobalt Family Consulting. His name is Jacob Thomason. Welcome, Jacob. How about that? You know, see? Our second panelist that's going to sit in with us this morning is actually part of the foundation family here. Her name is Kate Kofer. She's a licensed marriage and family. Oh, you can clap. There you go. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist and a registered play therapist. She has a private practice called Go Forth Counseling, and she's also the counselor at the Heritage School. And then lastly is also a member of our foundation family. His name is Trey Twyford, and he is a counselor at Branches Counseling, has a doctorate in marriage and family therapy. Sweet. Welcome.
Welcome.
Great. This is going to go so well. I think the 9 o'clock, I feel like the 9 o'clock went, I'd give it like B+. What do you think?
That's generous.
Okay.
It's all about the crowd.
That's right. Only up from here. Only up from here. So we just took a self-assessment on resilience. And everybody now has a number. Everyone's been labeled with a number, except for those who refuse to do it. They're labeled with a different label of obstinate and stubborn, which is fine. That's their own family's problem to work out with them. But everyone else who's following directions this morning now has a number that either says, hey, I have low resilience, normal resilience, or I'm highly resilient. But before we really jump into the conversation, let's just start with defining what does it mean, or what does the phrase mean, or word mean, resilient or resilience?
I think resilience it's the ability to kind of go through something stressful, tolerate discomfort, but was still within like a normal level of functioning, right? So if someone is, I think a lot of people here, like we can go through difficult stuff and be stressed and experience hurt. And as our functioning sort of decreases, that's kind of where that's how you would understand your resilience.
Okay. So it's the ability to go through things and not go off the rails.
Yeah. Going off the rails, that might be a low bar.
Okay. Right.
Like going through things and still able to connect in relationships, still able to show up to work. But, and yeah, that's a moving target for all of us.
Yeah. So, obviously everyone is here. So there's no understanding that everyone's life is perfect. So everyone is going through things at varying levels in this very moment. And so, but everybody's here. Everybody's breathing. Everyone's sitting here, mostly paying attention. So they're making it through things right now, right? So it's not just the ability to carry on or just to continue to exist, but let's be more specific, because obviously there's varying levels of resilience present in the room. How would they maybe recognize that they have, if they've kind of numbered themselves in that self-assessment as having low resilience? What are some probably red flags that they could kind of look at in their mind to say, this is how this number actually shows up in my life?
What I thought after the last service was in sports, sometimes people say you're down but not out, right? And so the difference in maybe a low score on the resiliency might be, I'm not going to get off the bench. The game will end, right? But I'm going to stay here. Versus a higher resiliency is I'm going to play to the end of the game, as hard as I can, reach out to the rest of the team, that kind of thing.
Yeah. What specific behaviors do you think or reactions would you see someone as they're trying to bring some practical understanding of resilience that they would see in their life? Like maybe reactions might be the best word. Correct me if I'm wrong. But what reactions or typical reactions would we see in someone who's really struggling with resilience?
I think he wants me to talk about the grown-up tantrums again. Yep.
You can, yeah,
Yep.
that's
Grown-up tantrums are a real thing, and it's someone who's over the age of 5, give or take. But they're pitching a fit. Either like having a hard time regulating themselves with their emotions. They may cry. They may demand things. Very much the Willy Wonka style. I want it and I want it right now. And then they struggle with being able to regulate it when they don't get it. That's a huge red flag for me in adults and in kids.
So you said crying. So if you cry, that's a red flag?
No, but it's
Yeah.
the excessive crying.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's the crying where it's like the heavy sobbing, the snot falling down your face, that kind of stuff, like
Yeah.
the Kim Kardashian cry.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Okay.
But it's where you're doing that more than you're not. So someone who every single time something is disrupted in their life, they go to that Kim Kardashian place instead of it being like oh, that really, I don't like that. And then they can't kind of get past it.
Okay. What else? What other behaviors might you see?
I mean, I interact with a lot of individuals that, specifically like parents of teenagers and older children, like young adult, and I think they'll believe they're functioning well, and the people around them will notice, hey, this person's withdrawn, or this person's drinking, or substance use is increasing. And so it's like I think to a large extent, some of us may not recognize this is how I act when I become dysregulated, or this is when I kind of get to the limits of my resiliency. When I can throw tantrums too, sometimes. And so I think like that's when I'm mad, or when I'm angry, or when I'm yelling, or when I'm being rude or unkind, that's kind of the edge of my resiliency. And so there's so like it can be seen in those little things, or things that we would try to convince ourselves are smaller. And then other flags, yeah, like I said, it's like substance use. A good measure too, you see a lot of people when they're experiencing stress and they're trying to cope or soothe, they'll start scrolling on their phone. And that's not the most destructive behavior, but it is an indicator of like, hey, you're probably getting to the end of, you're getting to the edge of what you can comfortably be resilient with.
So we've talked about resilience this morning, or at least the promise I made was we're going to talk about practical tools, resilience being one of those. So if it's a tool, where do we find it? How do we come by it?
One of the things you said earlier was everybody has it, and so it can be like a muscle that you develop. So you gotta practice, you gotta exercise it. So things like being able to look back and see how you made it through can be a way of building that resiliency.
And allowing yourself to do hard things. So not necessarily just accepting the easy path, but allow things to challenge you and let you sit in that place of uncomfortability.
I don't know if it feels good for us to do hard things, like to intentionally allow ourselves to be put in very uncomfortable positions when there's an easier way out. A lot of times, if we have the ability, like why not just figure out a way to push it aside, or maybe not address the issue and just hope it gets better, or maybe just even pretend like it never happened, the event or the bad behavior or the toxic behavior, whatever's taking place. So why would people subject themselves to difficult things if there was an easier way to move past it?
Growth. People want
Say that
to
again?
growth. People want to grow. Like, my morning has been anything but normal. I am incredibly introverted. I don't like speaking in front of crowds, and I had the choice this morning. I know that's awkward, isn't it? But I had the choice this morning. I could totally fake being sick, or I could show up.
Yeah.
And I chose the right thing, which is to show up and sit in being uncomfortable and allow myself to grow and allow myself to know, even though this is hard, incredibly uncomfortable, I'm probably going to need like a prize after this. But if I didn't do this, then I would just be affirming to myself, you can't do this, or you will never be comfortable in front of a crowd, or you will never be able to share the knowledge that you have. And so sometimes you have to, and then you grow from each of these things. And being uncomfortable, you just keep growing.
Would it be fair to say that if you avoided the hard challenges, that your life, at least for a time, might be easier, but you're actually making it less satisfying long term?
I mean, if you're okay being stagnant and just being chill with where you are in life, then maybe you could be okay with it. But most people, we're growing and evolving, so we have to keep evolving.
I think that's the metaphor that Trey was using with like exercising a muscle, and it gets stronger. I think we're all, even though we hope that we don't experience them, I think we're all confident that like challenges are on the horizon, and we would like to be ready for them. And I think when we understand this idea of resiliency, and we're actually asking ourselves, how can I be stronger and more capable? How can I handle stress better? How can I go through hard things without the other aspects of my life suffering? I think anyone would be like, well, if hard times are coming, then I want to be ready for those. And so I think, even in what Kate's saying, like, even if you are that person that's like, oh, it's just easier just to not deal with it, there's two things. One, like, you're still dealing with it, and the people around you that are close to you and love you, they're dealing with it alongside of you. So I don't think you get the get out of jail free card by ignoring it. And then I think the second thing is like, there's a chance something more difficult is coming. In how ready or able do you want to be for that?
Yeah. So, how do you find it? Like, if someone's going through something right now and they don't have it, it's too late to change that score. Like, you don't just magically say, well, shoot, I'm like a 1.4. But my life, like, the reason I decided to go to church for the first time and forever this morning is because I've tried everything else, and my grandmother insists that this is this is a part of the answer or whatever. And so they just decided to show up. But their score, as they self-assess, is terrible. Like, it's nowhere near what they would think, hey, this would be good, right? So what do? How do they get it right now?
Well, having tried something like coming here is a step, and sometimes it's worth just being encouraging that you might be doing more than you realize. So there are like immediate things. Meditation is like a pretty easy thing to practice, just thinking about your breathing. And so it's a way of calming down, maybe even if you're nervous on stage.
Once again, called out.
He said to himself. So yeah, there are skills to develop, but like anything, I mean, like exercise, it doesn't happen overnight. And so having taken steps like coming here is a great example of don't quit. There are more available.
What are some other things?
I think a couple approaches to it. You can start to think about the ways you calm yourself and how healthy, how beneficial, or actually how healthy or unhealthy are they. I think there's some of us that, and I've definitely been in this boat in earlier parts of my life where it's like, oh, okay, I'll have some alcohol or have a drink and help calm myself down. And it's like, well, wait a minute, is that, and again, I don't want to be the person saying like that's all bad, but for me, that's a clear marker of less resiliency. And so if I want to move in the direction of being even just slightly more resilient, can I do that less or not at all? And so like you can look at that from a sense of if we all like took inventory of our coping skills and had an idea of, or instead of using the word coping skills, that's a therapy word, the ways you chill out. And so if you look at all the different ways that you try to chill out and which of those are functional and which of those aren't. So I think that's one way you can move towards resiliency. I think maybe a more efficient way is talk with somebody. I think we're designed and wired to be better in community than alone. And whether you're actually alone or your perception is alone, if you say, hey, this is how I'm feeling, just by saying that, you're more resilient. There's a lot of research out there. So you need to, the idea that you're going to improve your brain with your own brain, that's a pretty inefficient way to do it. It's not, the outcomes aren't great if that's your approach. And so you go to someone else, you talk with them, you share what's going on, even if it's as simple as like, hey, I'd love to just hang out. I'd love to get coffee. I'd love help. And then I think just by doing that, you're a bit more resilient.
So it sounds like you're saying that there's a role that community plays in resiliency.
I think it's integral. I don't think that there are isolated people that are resilient.
It's a big statement.
I mean, that's what it seems like. I mean, just in my experience, I think for people that are feeling isolated would say, man, I don't know that I could handle much more. And I think, I mean, yeah, there's stubbornness, right, of like, hey, I'm okay. But are those isolated people functioning to their capacity or to their potential, I guess you could say? I don't think so.
Would it be fair to say, or maybe, I don't know if fair is the right word, fill it in with whatever the appropriate word would be, that when you're struggling with resilience, that you're falling short of potential?
I would say so. Just because God has called you to be the person you are, and He does not want you sitting in the muck and the sadness of your life. So you're not living your life to your fullest potential because you're allowing yourself to be held back.
I wonder how many people in our community have missed out on an incredible piece of their life because they were stuck. And I also wonder, which we didn't talk about this at the 9, but I wonder what role the church as a whole could have played in their lives had we been more outward focused than inward focused as a whole. When I say church, I mean Big C church, every church that would call themselves a church. If that was our approach to what we did, and it was the norm, I don't want to take away responsibility for someone's own decisions, but I do want to say that there's an ability for the church to play a vital role. And again, I don't mean the institution, I mean the people that make it up, play a vital role in the community that you're talking about. I think it's so important when we talk about here and creating a You Belong Here movement where people are the destination, we say it every week, not because it's the cliche or catchy vision statement, but because we really want it to be hammered home each and every week that your destination wasn't a building, but your destination is people. And that the people you'll interact with this week, it's more important for you to be Jesus-like in that moment than for you to show up to a Jesus gathering on Sunday. The destination will always be people, never a building or a place or a gathering time. So when we think about resilience, I love the concept of us being involved with people doesn't change the resilience, but it gives them a key to unlocking to some resilience if they want to utilize being involved with people.
Yeah, I think if people are perceive that they're alone, whether they are or not, if the belief is I'm alone or missing community or missing connection, you're going to be more stressed. You're more susceptible to injury. You're more susceptible to hurt. And when that hurt happens, it makes a bigger impact. And I think maybe some of us, the church we grew up with, is like, hey, once you start acting better, you're welcome to come on in. Which in this conversation, that's a little bit like the doctor saying, hey, I'll give you this medicine once you feel better. Right? And I think like that's what's so hurtful about it. That's what's so hurtful about the church saying, or the church sort of communicating that there's this standard that must be met before someone comes in, is because a lot of times that standard that's not being met, it's a result of mental health or injury or stuff that could actually be somewhat mitigated by connection.
Yeah. Today, in total between the 9 and the 11, we're going to have somewhere, but I haven't seen our numbers today, but somewhere between 180 and 220 kids under the age of 10 that'll be on campus, which means there's a lot of people that are here that are responsible or play some role in the life of children, whether they're a caregiver or, a mother or father or grandparents caring for their kids, or aunts and uncles caring for their kids, or the foster parents or the adoptive parents. There's a lot of people that fall under the umbrella of I'm responsible for kids. So, I think adults can see, okay, got ya, I need to do hard things. I need to do all those things. Like, okay, I've got to sit in it, but not sit in the muck. I got to sit in the reality that I can get through this. I'm not out of the game. I need to find community, all those things. But what would y'all say to parents who are like, what if I could help my kid become more resilient before they get into my shoes with my responsibilities? Maybe Kate, we'll start with you because you deal with kids like all nonstop. Mm-hmm. So what would you tell a parent if they want to make their kid more resilient or help their kid become more resilient? What's 1, 2, whatever you got?
So I work with people as young as 4 all the way up to, I'm not really an adult person, so like we kind of cut it off at a certain age. But it's different for everybody, but one of the universal things that I have found is that we have to let our kids struggle. We can't fix everything for them. We can't swoop in and save the day. We have to let them sit in that discomfort. And then we also have to help them understand what their problem-solving strategies are. If, like I know at the 9 we were talking about, we have kids who forget their shoes at school. Like, it happens. They've seen it. Like, the AGs have seen it. But there's kids who...
Dang.
I'm not saying y'all do it. I'm just saying y'all see it. But, there are kids who forget their shoes when they're getting out of carpool. And immediately we always say, like, that stinks. Like, I'm so sorry. But we have options. They need to figure out their options. Is it... they go to Lost and Found and find a pair of shoes? Do they go to the dress code closet and find a pair of shoes? Or do they walk around in their socks all day? That's their choice, but they have 3 choices. One of them not being a parent coming in to save the day. Not only are we giving them choices, but we're also giving them the responsibility of, I know I need this. I know I need my band instrument. I know I need my homework. I know I need my computer. But as soon as parents come in and like sneak a little folder into their locker, that's showing their kid that they can't do it, that they have to have someone coming in behind them to fix everything.
But what if we don't want our kid like bullied for walking around in socks?
Yep.
Oh, snap, Natalie.
But I think it's also, if you don't want your kid being bullied for not having shoes on, are they in the right environment for growth? Or are they in the wrong environment?
So go without shoes. That's one thing they can do. What else?
They can also give them those responsibilities and encourage their responsibilities. Now, if you see them kind of going to the left where it's like, maybe that's not the best choice, that's when the adults can step in and say, walk me through your thought process. You're about to make a really poor choice, which we don't need you going down that path. So let's talk about the solutions you came up with or the problem-solving strategies you came up with, and then let's talk about maybe some that are a little bit more appropriate. That way you are encouraging them, but you're also getting them thinking. So they are just not cutting themselves off to like, okay, mom will figure it out. Like, great day for her, where you really want it to be more about them making that choice because it instills that sense of, I got this. Like, yeah, mom may have helped me, but I got this.
What role, if any, does failure play in it?
You have to fail. Life is all about failures. That's part of growth, and it's what you do after you fail. And it's kind of looking at yourself and reminding yourself, all I can do is the next right thing. And the next right thing is going to bring me to my next step.
Yeah. So, not that this is a prevailing issue in the Coweta County public school system, private school system, and homeschool network, but what about schoolwork?
Don't do it for them. Just don't do kids' homework for them, or don't do their schoolwork for them. A lot of parents...
What about science projects?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. A lot of parents have a tendency of kind of swooping in and stepping in and being like, I got this, I got this. I really like playing with markers and you don't. Or they'll see their kid and be like, I know you have a D in that class and I really want to boost you up to a B. And so parents will sometimes step in because it's easier, it's quicker, it's more efficient. But that's because we're operating with a fully formed brain. Like children are not. Their frontal lobe doesn't develop until they're in their mid-20s. So, and that is the decision-making part. So that's our job is to act as that, but not to be it. So we have to let them have those moments where they forget to do an assignment or they forget to do a project, or maybe their project isn't glitterified like I would do it, but it's exactly what their work needs to be.
Now, what about the parents who see their kids' failures as a personal reflection of themselves, just asking for a friend?
That's when the parent really needs to look within themselves. Why are you projecting your own insecurities and your own feelings onto your child? Because it is not your child's responsibility to make you feel better.
Oh, wow. Fellas?
Sorry.
I think one thing I've noticed in my own experience as a parent is how often I model a lack of resilience, or how often I model dysregulation. And so, I've told this story, or not really story, but I experience it commonly. I have 3 daughters, and they all yell in the car at the same time.
Like they're screaming at you because they're angry, or like they're just playing, or what's...
It's
They're singing Frozen?
all the above, the
Yeah.
above. Hopefully not at once. And so just that loud, like just really loud in the car, and my initial reaction is to get dysregulated. And so I think, and that's not a choice, right? So one of the things that the most common task, or the most consistent task that your brain is doing, is it's sort of assessing and responding to stress. And so if you didn't have that part, you wouldn't get to the bathroom on time. Those are all those things. It's like, hey, I've got this sensation, I need to address it. And when you're a parent in a car, it's, I've got this really loud, annoying sensation in my ear, I have to squash it out. That quick knee-jerk reaction is automatic, it's instinctual. You're not going to prevent that, unless it just doesn't bother you. But the things that cause that automatic reaction to come up really quickly, it happens really quickly. Now, when you're an adult, like Kate was saying, the other parts of your brain are supposed to step in and say, hey, don't follow that first idea. The first one was the bad one. And you got to slow it down and give yourself time to have the second one come up. And so whether it's, we all know the things that are going to make us mad and get us upset initially. So I think as a parent, if you want to help your kids have greater resiliency, spend some time thinking about the ways you model what you do when you get dysregulated. Think about the temper tantrums you throw, or just the fact it's like, how do we handle boredom? Well, we look at our phones. That's how we model handling boredom. So our kids aren't very resilient with boredom, right? And I think what we're forgetting is like just to what extent we actually model pretty poor coping. And I do it too. My wife's here at this service. You can ask her about it after.
Kelsey? Just kidding. She shook her head yes immediately. She's like, telling the truth. So let's think through, and we'll start to wrap up. Let's think through someone who's here today and they're at their lowest point. Like as low as they've been, mentally, emotionally, that they would say they have no resilience left. Or maybe they didn't have any to begin with, or they felt like it left 6 traumas ago or 6 crises ago. And they're here this morning. From a counselor standpoint, what do you tell them?
Allow people to show up for you. Because people want to help. And what we know from a couple episodes of Girl Meets World that I watched once, that people change people and people want to help. And so when someone comes up, offers help, be okay with accepting it instead of trying to be stoic about it. And you have to acknowledge the fact that it's okay not to be okay, but it's also okay to ask for help.
Okay.
In community, there's usually somebody who's at least a little bit ahead of you. And if you can get connected with somebody who's on the other side or figured out how to manage a little bit for now, I think that can be a really cool resource. So even if it's a person in this community or somebody from family or work or counselor or something like that, getting connected is a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, Trey said it earlier, be bold. I think that the people around you may not understand to the extent that you're suffering or overwhelmed. It may not make sense to them why, but I think what we all have a human understanding, a very human experience of like what it feels like to kind of be at your end, or be at the end of a relationship, or be at the end of, just the end of your ability to handle it. And so I think I really confidently feel there's people around you that get that.
I feel very confident in the people who would call Foundation home. And if you're here this morning and that's where you feel like you're at, you're like, hey, I'm at the end. I've run out of ideas and I don't have resilience. This thing you're talking about, I'm out. I'm empty. I feel very confident with the people that call Foundation home, that every single person here would be willing to hear you. And whether it's a complete stranger or someone maybe you just ran into out by the restroom and you just happened to say hello and maybe you smiled at one another and it's like that was a nice interaction, or maybe it's someone who held a door for you as you came in, or someone who checked your kids in for the first time or helped you walk through that process. I feel really confident. It doesn't have to be one of our pastors that's on staff. I feel very confident that anyone who calls Foundation home would be ready to hear you today. Not because they have some great training, but because they know that if they're doing what Jesus asked them to do, that we would make ourselves available for people, and that people matter. And you matter. You have a worth, and I don't even know your name. And I don't have to know your name at the moment to know how much you're worth, because God's already informed all of us of your worth. That if it was just you, if you were the last one, he still would have sent his son Jesus to die for you. And that gives me all I need to know about you. That means that you're enough, whether anyone else in your life has told you that or not. You know, I also think that while everyone here in our community of Jesus followers would be willing to listen, I also think that there's opportunities that exist right now in this moment for you to expand beyond just a Sunday morning conversation. I don't think there's a single group we have right now that's full that would tell me no if I called and said, hey, I need to add one more person to your small group. They'd be a perfect fit. They've got whatever, I don't think there's a person here that would say, sorry, Clint, we have no more room. We're completely slammed. We cannot fit another person in if it was asked. There's events that are coming up to get connected that's strictly relational pieces. You don't have to know anything about the Bible. You don't have to have any literacy, biblical literacy at all. No one's going to ask you Bible questions or quiz you about your Bible. None of those things. It's just people looking to find their people. And so there's opportunities for you to jump into that community, or maybe find some sense of community that is a huge part of resilience. I love what Trey said, that if you feel like you're out of resilience, the truth is you have a little more than what you think you do, because you actually showed up this morning. Or you turned your phone on and you're watching us online at this very moment, searching. So you're not as empty as you think. That you've got a reserve that maybe only God has put there because he was working when you didn't feel like he was, or you didn't see him working. And it's that reserve that's brought you to this moment. And I want you to know that there's never a moment in your life where you're out. Because the truth is, the way community works is that when you're out, I've still got some, and I've got some for you. And we can share what we have with each other. And we can lean on one another when it feels like we're empty. This phrase that comes up throughout the narrative of the people of God is that when he's involved, our cups run over. In other words, he gives more than enough. He fills it, and just to show you how good he is, he adds some more, so that we have a goodness mess to clean up as a reminder, hey, I'm with you. And sometimes we do get ahead of him. We drink it all. That doesn't mean that the person next to us doesn't have a goodness mess they can share with you. You know, we've got a couple things that you can do, very tangible things today. The first is, if you want to talk to any three of our folks that are on stage here, Trey or Kate or Jacob, Trey's actually got a tent outside, and so he'll be at the tent, or his own tent. Kate and Jacob, I've asked them to just kind of hang out under the awning outside, and so they'd love to have a conversation with you. And then, so that's the first thing. The second thing is, the tents that are outside are all mental health providers that we partner with in our community. And we've got a relationship with them. I refer to them often. We've had really positive experiences with referring people to them. And so they're here. They were here last week. They're here this week. They'll be here next week as an opportunity for you to take away that barrier of, let's just say I did want to reach out for help. I don't even know where to start. You start here. Start at the tents. So that's the second thing. You can go and just get some information about. They all handle things differently. They have their own approach. The heart behind it is the same, but they have their own approach. They all have specialties that they kind of deal with, and so you can go and check those things out. The third thing is actually like booking a session to say, hey, I'm going to go talk to someone. I want to talk to someone at one of these tents or that's represented here today. And one of the barriers to that, I know, especially when we run on empty, is finances are a big deal. And a lot of times when we get super stressed, you know, it's not like we got a lot of money just laying around to try something that a pastor said you should try. And so we, as a church, we take some of what's given an offering and we put it into a fund to fund first-time sessions for people that want to give counseling a try. And that's open to anybody. Anybody that comes here, you don't have to say, hey, well, technically I'm a member at Foundation. We don't have membership here. You either come and contribute, you're a part of what you're doing, or you choose not to. So we don't have membership. So if you're here for the first time, that offer is just as good as for you as someone who was on our launch team to help us launch things 8 years ago. It's equal playing field, equal share in that. And so if you want to go and book a session with no expense to you, because maybe you're iffy, like, I don't think this is going to work. I don't want to waste the money it would cost. Then allow our congregation to waste some of what we've put aside on your behalf, because we believe that it's a very positive thing. Now, the folks that are going to deal with sessions, they're not perfect. They're not Jesus. You're not going to meet Jesus in these counseling sessions. They have bad days. Some days they show up to work and they didn't show up with their best. I don't know if you can relate to that or not, having off days at work. But the consistency of what we've seen with these organizations have been really good things. You're not going to find a miracle in a counseling session, but you will find a next step that moves you in the direction of being healthy. And if we can help fund that to just get you started, we would love to do that. The only thing you need to do is once you book your session, you got to just shoot us a text message in our online number. It's just when you Google Foundation, it's the number that's there. Just Google, hey, this is my name. This is who I booked the session with. This is the day and time. And I'm going to copy and paste that information and send it to their front office person and say, when this person shows up for this appointment, will you send the bill to us and we'll take care of it. So that's the only thing you have to do. You don't have to tell me how the session went. You don't have to give me a download or a summary. None of that. You just got to say, I booked it, and then you got to go to the session and we'll take care of the bill because they'll send it to us afterwards. So those are ways for you to practically make a move this morning towards some resilience. Hey, what do we do? We're going to jump into community. We're going to do something about it. We're going to do the next right thing. We've eliminated the barriers of I don't know who to ask or where to go. They're here on campus. We're eliminating the barrier of finances or a thing for me to even try this out. That's off the table. So it's just whether or not you have some of that courage we've already prayed for at the beginning of our talk. They were saying, God, if we could become clear on a next step today, would we have the courage to do something about it? And it's my hope that you can find that courage between now and the time we let out. If you're here and you're like, hey, my life is going really good right now. I don't think I need to go to the tents. I'll make the same ask every week that everyone who's a part of Foundation would go to at least one tent, which will guarantee that everyone who needs to go to a tent will get to a tent without any stigma or anyone thinking, if I go to a tent, people are going to think my life's a wreck. So we're just going to eliminate that. Everybody go to a tent. At minimum, you can go tell Trey, thanks for being here, or Kate, or well, Kate won't be out of the tent, but Trey will be under the tent. So you can go there, and at minimum, you can just say thanks for being a part of what our church is doing. And then for those of you who need to grab something, grab a card, have a conversation.